Hi, today we're going to talk about the Jane era and the feminist theory. And first, let's talk about the background. Jane era was created in 19th century Victorian England. At the time, women had no social status and were unlikely to have a decent life or good marriage. Women suffered much discriminations in a patriarchal society. However, female writers used their pens to speak for oppressed women during this period, and Jane era became one of the most influential novels. Jane era is a reflection of the actual social conditions in England and the social background, express her unique feminist idea through Jane era. In her writing, the image of Jane era, a woman who dared to resist and fight for freedom and equality, has an impact on the world. And let's look into the Victorian period and the general idea of feminism. So, as part of the Victorian period, Victorian literature has many characteristics. It is complex and multidimensional, consisting of great variation between romance and reality. The search for equality through Jane era struggle for self-realization as a feminist was another critical theme in this context. The Victorians believed that people were born unequal, that people of high status looked down on people of low status, and that men were superior to women. As a result, women like Jane were treated unequally in all areas. When Jane realized this unfair situation, she constantly fought against it for fundamental equal rights. In addition, the most prominent theme in the book is true love. In Jane's era's life, the pursuit of true love is a fundamental expression of a struggle to achieve self-worth. In Jane's era's understanding, love is pure and divine, and it cannot be measured by status, power, or wealth. So let's introduce the feminist theory. It's to achieve gender equality for all human beings. All feminist theory have a basic premise that women worldwide are in a state of oppression, discriminations, and hierarchy, and women prevalent in such a cross-historical and cross-cultural social structure are in an unequal position with men in the political, economic, cultural, intellectual, conceptual, and ethnical sphere, even in the private sphere of the family. So we're going to talk about the three aspects today. The first is the pursuit of self-esteem, and Jane's pursuit of equality, independence, and Jane's pursuit of love. So the first, let's talk about the pursuit of equality and independence in this novel. So after Jane's fight with John Reed, her early feminism comes out, as she refused to surrender to violence and the threatening from others. When confronted by Mrs. Reed, Jane refused to be treated as an inferior being and finally speak out in a sharp and cold revelation of discrimination. When Mrs. Reed chastised Jane for telling a lie for various reasons, Jane perversely defended herself. And you can look into the excerpts in the screen that shows how Jane refused to surrender to the John Reed and Mrs. Reed. And here, when confronted with Mrs. Reed's hypocritical and sanctimonious talk before Mr. Lawyer, the apothecary, she retorted directly and forcefully by saying this passage in the screen. And Jane's defiance of Mrs. Reed and John represent her feminist sense of being respected by others as a decent and respectable person. After being sent to Lowood boarding school, Jane became more robust and independent, and her understanding of self-respect became deeper. She realized that even in the face of someone as powerful and authoritative as Mr. Brocklehurst, the head inspector of this charitable school, she will never give in but will resist it as long as her self-esteem and dignity are hurt. And now let's talk about self-esteem. At Tonfield, Jane Eyre meets and falls in love with Mr. Rochester, and the process of this reflects Jane's feminism and her new idea. Jane loves Rochester with all her heart. Rochester's status and wealth make him too high to be approached by Jane, but she never feels inferior to Rochester. Even though she is a humble governess, she believed they were fair and should respect each other. By at the wedding, after Jane Eyre found out that Rochester already had a wife, she chose to live rationally because she knew she would lose her dignity if she lived with Rochester. With strong perseverance, she left him painfully and firmly. And from the picture is Jane and Rochester wedding scenes and Rochester's legal insane wife. So Felix except is also my favorite except from this novel is from Bronte, page 301. Do you think I am an automaton, a machine without feelings, and can bear to have my morsel of bread snatched from my lips and my drop of living water dashed from my cup? Do you think because I am poor, obscure, plain, and little, I am so nurse and hurt nurse, you think wrong? So this except is Jane says to Rochester. Although she had a deep feeling for Rochester, she could not tolerate any compromise in her marriage. In the ending, Rochester's house burns down after a fire and became disabled. But in this situation, Jane Eyre returned to Mrs. Rochester and cares only for this man. She is determined to choose her love and show her concept of love by her actions, which is equal and sincere devotion. So from this except, it shows that in most people's eyes, no one wants to marry a man who has lost his eyesight and most of his mind. Jane Eyre was unique in the Victorian era. As a feminist, she represented a rebellious woman who craved respect. She is even willing to take care of Mr. Rochester, to read with him, to walk with him, to sit with him, to wait on him, and to be eye and hand to him. This also shows the great love of Jane Eyre. And now let's talk about the third part, the love, which is the expressions of Jane Eyre's struggle for self-realization. And throughout Jane Eyre's life, the pursuit of true love was an essential expression of struggle for self-realization. After Jane Eyre left Rochester, St. John River proposed to her. Although the other man was ideal, Jane Eyre refused because his love would be one of duty, not of passion. From Terry, page 29. And St. John proposed to Jane only because he thought Jane Eyre was a good candidate for a missionary wife. He found Jane Eyre Jane Eyre to be meek, firm, and tenacious, for he needed just such an assistant. Jane Eyre said that if she married him, she would be giving up half of her life, and if she went to India, she would be dying prematurely. Jane Eyre insists that true love should be based on equality, mutual understanding, and respect. So she refused St. John River's marriage proposal. Jane was very different from the social environment of her time. She dared to fight against the traditional concept of marriage, which were reflected the cry and desire of all feminists for true love. Perhaps Jane's choice was considered shocking, but it did bring a wave of shock to Victorian society. And in conclusion, Charlotte Bronte portrayed Jane Eyre in three stages. The first is germination of her feminist idea, from her struggle in her childhood life when confronted with Mrs. Reed and John Reed. And the second stage is the formation of her feminist idea from the tragic experience of boarding school, where she learned about the survival of the fittest. And the third, which is also the most impressive and important stage, is the mature. Shows her is her pursuit of true love, independence, and equality, where feminist idea gradually mature. Jane Eyre's growth minor that of Charlotte Bronte. And Jane Eyre's search for her own identity, equal true love, self-respect, and independence not only reflect the new idea of the author and the feminism of the time, but also continue to inspire women throughout history. And thank you so much for listening to my sharing today. I hope you have a great and wonderful day.